Yeah, I'm honored to be here. It's great to hear from Matt and Yaniv on managing that program. Just a quick spew about me. So yeah, recently I was at Google. I've been at Ventures for 6 months. I have an interesting perspective. I think I've been fortunate to work for a company that's been acquired, a company that's gone public, a company that's failed, and as a consultant for insecurity for 9 years, and being in the leadership seat of all of those other ones. So it's really helped me as I think about investments and also as I think about CISO leadership. Today, I want to talk a little bit about negligence, risk-taking, this concept I call the negligence bar that used to always be part of my security training at my companies, and risk management, which we've talked a little bit already today about. But I want to use and talk through a few terms, if I could. One is the concept of a victim, and that is one that is acted on and usually adversely affected by a force or an agent, or it's to be hurt, damaged, or killed because of something or someone. Now, that's not the most positive way to start a presentation, but let's start there anyways. The second term is negligence, and this is when you're careless. And the legal definition really is failure to exercise the care that a reasonably prudent person would exercise in like circumstances. So why am I sharing these? Well, I want to talk a little bit about negligence in life. And some of you may have experienced some of these. I know I have. One is perhaps leaving your kids at home while you go away, like in the movie Home Alone. You're just going to be out for a few minutes and you leave your kids. The second is it's a beautiful ski day. You come to the border and there's a lot of powder on the other side. And you know there's no controls, there's no ski patrol, there's no avalanche control. And you decide, I'm gonna hop the fence. And the third is probably something I assume all of us have done, is texting while driving, right? So part of the consideration when we do these things is, guess what? Bad happens to other people. It doesn't happen to me. It's often what comes through our mind. But taking the texting while driving experience, why do we take on this excessive risk? One might be we're misinformed. We don't know maybe that people die when they text and drive. It has happened. We face external pressures. We just got a text from our boss. Our kids are yelling at us in the back seat to go to McDonald's, whatever it may be. We're in a rush. We could pull over, but we're late already. It feels easier, more convenient to just pick up our phone and text. We've done the same thing before. There's never been an issue. We all know that past does not indicate future behavior, right? We've not known anyone personally hurt by taking this risk, and I think that's key. We don't know anybody that's been hurt. And ultimately, we underestimate the real risk, and we keep doing it. So here's an example where I believe there was an underestimation of real risk. In 2014, Sony Pictures was about to release the movie, The Interview, which is about a North Korean leader who gets killed at the end of the movie. We all know who that probably is. Fortune magazine did actually an amazing retrospective on this incident that you can read about online. But a few quotes before the movie came out that were interesting. It said the movie's doing something that was bold, right? Taking on subject matter of notoriety. This is fun with a dash of smarts. And then Seth Rogen had said, people don't usually want to kill me for one of my movies until after they paid $12 for it. So there was kind of some lightweight humor going on, some joking, but behind the scenes, there was some concern. And what happened in November of 2014? Well, Sony Pictures was attacked, and some argue it was North Korea, some argue it wasn't. but regardless, it was very impactful to them. In some cases, some people have said it sent them back to the Stone Ages. They were running on doing things by fax machines, writing notes to each other. Everything was handwritten. Lots of their machines were wiped, and data got leaked that was then periodically leaked over the weeks ahead. And so Sony Pictures victim, from the definition, I would say, yes, they were a victim. And you can see some of these quotes. And I would often tell my team when I gave training and to leadership, I would say, if we are attacked by a nation state who is persistent and patient, can we withstand that? And I'm not sure too many companies can. And so I have some, I knew some people at Sony as well. And so I have some feelings towards them and how difficult this must have been. And if you are in security and you've dealt with an incident, you know how this can be. However, you can also be a bit negligent, right? And I'm not saying they were, but there were some quotes. One was, the fact that it's a nation state and is hard to defeat doesn't mean you have to leave the doors wide open and put out the welcome mat. And they made a decision allegedly a while before this incident that they weren't going to invest some money in whatever reason to not have to save $1 million loss. And from a financial perspective, that seems like a perfectly viable explanation, but they may have miscalculated what the loss could be, right? And that $10 million invested in a different way might have really helped. But I'm not the person to say. So what does all this talk of texting while driving and thinking of the Sony have to do with anything? Why should you care? Why should I care? You have to hustle when you're in that security leadership seat. And that's what I want to share today, because you are ultimately on the clock. And when I was between jobs or thinking about taking a new position, one of the considerations I had to have was, I'm going to have to go into this company and I realize I'm not going to know everything that's going on and I have to hustle. And this is a picture from the NFL draft where in the first round, each team has 10 minutes to pick their first selection, right? You miss that 10 minutes, you get bypassed. And that is critical to the success of a team. And my kids would come into my office on weekends in the first year, especially, and say, "Why are you working?" And I'm like, "Because I'm on the clock." And so why was that a priority? Well, priority one is what? I want to avoid being the data breach cover story of the news of the day. We read about all of these. Matt indicated some, Equifax, Target. I want to hustle as hard as I can to ensure that we don't make the news. Now, we all know it's not security's fault necessarily if you make the news, but I'm going to do everything in my power to not make the news. Okay. Now, priority two is if I make the news, I want to make sure that I'm perceived more as a victim and not negligent. And that keys into why you have to hustle. Because if I'm not hustling and I'm not getting people on board on the things we need to be doing that are key risks, then the media might portray me in a different way. And I don't want that. So I have this concept of the negligent bar, and I would share this in our awareness training with folks. And I'd say we have unreasonable risk as we've started down this journey that we have to uncover. And I need everyone to help me uncover that. It's not just me and tools. I need help. Tell me where the bodies are buried. Ultimately, our customers have expectations, as does the media, as does the public, that we meet a certain level of reasonable security. And we have to do that to get above that negligent bar from a viewpoint standpoint. And that can change and will change and is dependent on your industry that you're in as well, and the kind of data you're gathering, right? But what did Sony teach us? Sony taught us also that the security basics matter. And often it's a lot of those that get you above that bar, right? 2FA password managers, how important and critical is that? on your email and on your administrative access and sharing with people how to do strong passwords. It's still the world we live in. Encryption with proper key management. Maybe it doesn't necessarily stop the Sony hack, but maybe it slows it down. Malware protection. Yeah, signature-based stuff can be gone around, and we saw in some of those quotes, but today there's such better behavioral-based stuff. Matt indicated too that the tools are only getting better. They definitely are. Security monitoring. Got to be able to monitor what your people are doing, also the threats that are hitting your infrastructure, but also, is there bad actors that are trying to exfiltrate data out? Are we seeing troves of data go leaking out? And then training. We're not here to make everybody a security expert, but there's a certain level that we should expect, and it builds that culture and allows people to indicate risks and be comfortable sharing them with the security team. And ultimately, you wrap all that around third-party assessments and audits. It's why you do it. Don't believe me, believe all the things that are saying that we're doing it right. And if you do these things, and there's more, certainly, you can build a framework. You can use, for example, the CIS top security controls, which really are focused on areas you could get breached at. But if you do those basic things, the basics still matter and will likely get you above that bar. Now, you don't aspire to be a victim. We don't ever aspire to be a victim, but we got to avoid negligence. The second thing is you got to avoid being the lowest common denominator. And recently, I had a conversation with an entrepreneur, and we were talking about turning on WAF and turning on guard duty in AWS, and how customers might turn that on, and instantly they see all these attacks. And they go, oh, is my infrastructure misconfigured? Am I under attack? Is the tool broken? Well, no, you're just swimming in the internet of muddy water, right? The vast majority of time, attackers are opportunists. They're just probing for targets. This is the reality of it. The more tooling you have, the more understanding you're going to have that you are getting hit by these. Usually, you are not an unprobed targeted target, which means you are not predestined to be a target, usually. To attackers, you just can't leave the door open. So if you leave it open a crack, all of a sudden you're going to get a ton of discovery on you. And all of a sudden you are a target, right? Close those cracks. However, you can be a target depending on poking the bear, right? And Sony likely poked the bear. And so you have to, as part of risk assessment, we talk about technology risk assessment needs to go broader than that. You need to think about the culture of your company externally. How do people view your company? And this is all very key, these lists of when you're thinking about if you're going to move jobs, when you're evaluating what company to go to. You need to look at these things because it's going to impact your security role and the threats you face. But culture, industry, government, law enforcement, you might get more people interested in you. Products, what kind of products you sell? Are you selling a product that monitors people's behavior? Might get more people interested in you, in attacking you. Data gathered. What kind of data are you gathering on people? What do you have? I was asked to interview for a company that does DNA stuff. I wasn't interested in that. I'm not sure I wanted the pressure of being responsible for DNA data and securing it. Customers, who are your customers? Early on in one of the companies I was at, a vast majority of our customers were adult sites, crypto companies, gaming companies. They attract a certain type of hacker. And then how does your company do community interaction, activism? How are your executives talking about what are they interested in on social media? All plays into, are the bees attracted to the honey, right? And so I'm not here to say you should be one way or the other, whether you should be Sheriff of Nottingham or Robin Hood. I think in different levels, your company is going to vary in that regard. But as a security professional, your team has to understand the risk with that. And Sony had interactions on that. They probably needed to heighten their controls based on what could have happened, based on how they were being perceived, right? So you get all this. So are we good? Is this the end of the presentation? Well, no. We've sort of also created a bit of a monster, right? And that monster has to do with every time there's a public data breach, yes, it raises awareness and people get interested in security, but it also raises rigor. It raises regulation. People get called to Congress. We get a lot more conversations about it, and people get very nervous. And part of it means that they sometimes change away from what security things are reasonable and matter into areas that go well beyond that. And an example of that might be these shoes, right? And if you recognize these shoes, these are Roger Reed's shoes, the famous shoe bomber. And these are from the FBI's picture of those shoes that's on their website. Well, quite a few years ago, he tried to blow up a plane by lighting his shoes on fire that had a compound in it that could have caused some destruction. He wasn't successful. 5 years after he did that, the TSA made the requirement that everybody had to take their shoes off when they went through security, right? And that seems like a small thing and an annoyance. And sure, I want to do that for the security of all my fellow passengers. But if you add up the total of that and the time and the annoyance, and is that really managing the root cause? It's a lot of time and effort and annoyance. And similarly, what we've done in the security world is we've gone to each other, and this is a slightly different topic, but we've ended up playing company risk assessment pong with each other when it comes down to, are you secure or not? And in a TPRM vendor risk management space. So you'll have one customer that says, hey, to a vendor, I want assurance that you'll stay out of the news and keep my data safe, right? And how do I do that? Well, I'm going to throw the book at you, and I'm going to throw a huge questionnaire. I'm going to redline a contract. I'm going to request a meeting, all this stuff. And it causes a lot of time and effort. And it only gets worse as we see more companies not meeting the negligent bar. I think if we all met it, maybe this is a different world. What's fascinating about this, especially in the SaaS world, as me being a CISO there, is when you're a vendor, sometimes now you switch and now you become the customer to that vendor. And what happens? We do it all over again to each other. And ultimately, hey, I might have sent somebody just the things I care about, and whoa, now I'm getting back a 700 questionnaire when they're on the other side of the fence. What's going on? I once had this happen. We had this long conversation. We were getting it totally drawn out. And I just emailed the CISO. And I said, can we just get legal and sales off the call? Let's just the two of us get in a room or on a phone call and just talk about real risk. And ultimately, that helped. And we had a great conversation, and we were able to boil it down to what mattered. Now, here's an example of where this has changed the world to us. And the problem is we don't have context on risk in the companies we do business with. So we get the book thrown at each other. We're not transparent on risk. We don't always have a risk-based program that we can share. And so here are some of the actual customer contractual requests I've received through the years. I have a little black book of them that I like to keep. And I pulled out a few. I won't go through all of these. But the themes of these, I'll say, are words such as you must do something immediately, which is not auditable and defensible, very hard. You must pre-authorize access when we're the caretakers, custodians of your data, and we're running a cloud business. How do we do that? I want to look at all the background checks and pre-approve people that have access to our data. Really hard. And the bottom one where it says, you must remediate all known vulnerabilities within 24 hours. All known. I don't care what the severity is. And it proves out something, right? We're doing this to each other. We're messing each other up. What's missing? Well, risk-based transparency. So in absence of a risk-based, transparent, auditable program, your security program becomes the most stringent of all your customers. right? And you live by the world of what they state to you. And again, we do it to each other. I may be like, wow, I can't believe this person's asked me to do this. And then on the same breath, I'll go ask a vendor to do the exact same thing when I think it's unreasonable. And so it's a silly world that we live in. I had this conversation with legal at a number of the companies I was at. I said, I never want to get into a position where the customer owns my security program, especially in a multi-tenant environment, because it's nearly impossible. It has to be a risk-based approach, and I have to defend it that way. And there has to be a level of trust, but I have to be transparent on how I'm doing it. And so I'll take the example here, just in conclusion, of the risk-based response. And this is just I have a screen here of Vulcan, just as an example. A lot of tools do risk management for you, but taking the remediate all known vulnerabilities within 24 hours. Well, I don't want to agree to that. What I'm more comfortable agreeing with, and it's lengthy, but I'm just going to highlight it, is, you know what we really do, and what's more impactful is I review we scan continuously. We risk, rank, review, and correlate all findings. We bring in context of where those environments exist. We group them because in reality, 3 low findings might actually be a critical, and it might need to be all hands on deck. And that's the kind of program I want to demonstrate to my customers that I'm running, not a blanket statement. So in summary, get it and stay above the negligent bar, and then encourage your peers to do the same thing. We all have to help each other if we want to improve the industry, and the basics do matter. Force probes to look elsewhere, right? Harden your shell, harden your outside, make sure that they're going and attacking somebody else. And if we all do this, maybe the probes will eventually go away. Be in front of business decisions that may alter your threat landscape. We talked about that. This is important, and this is why you go meet with business unit leaders. You go get their perspective on, hey, how can I help you? But B, what's coming down the pipe? Like, where should we be worried? This is really key for us when Zendesk went public, is getting in advance notice that that was happening, because we put in some controls before that date. So things like our website wouldn't be hacked and taken down. We put in additional controls in case bad actors wanted to do things to embarrass us. Build out a transparent, risk-based, defensible security program that you can be proud of and that you can share with your customers. And then finally, like, be reasonable with each other, right? If something you're being asked to do is ridiculous, don't ask somebody else to do it because it's ridiculous. Like, let's be fair, and let's chase what matters using a risk-based approach. And so that's what I had, and hopefully that helps you in your sphere of influence. Thank you.